Got a question from someone in the community. It's the top link in the description if you want to join. Parents won't let me skip breakfast. I realize how important it is to skip breakfast to avoid the carb crash and to not eat many carbs in general before working. I've looked through the research studies and I've seen that breakfast isn't even good for you and skipping it is actually healthier. That's actually a red pill matrix escape. There's a lot of people who are probably watching this on YouTube right now who still eat breakfast, lunch, dinner, which is going to sound crazy coming from like some random guy who's not a doctor, and doctors have been telling you and your family that this is healthy. But it seems to be the case that if you are health maxing, you want to just be as healthy as possible, you want to have like the best brain, you want to have the best energy levels, that eating about one meal a day or even having alternate days where you eat is probably more natural and healthy. That literally means you might wake up and literally you just have water and no food, no breakfast before school. You go into school, maybe don't even eat anything in school or work, and then when you come back home for dinner time, you feast like a king. And you might be thinking, but like, what if I'm hungry? What's interesting is for the people who are gluttonous and they eat throughout the entire day, they're also hungry. Like this is a very interesting point, isn't it? People will be like, oh no, I can't fast because I'm hungry. What's interesting is fat people, gluttonous people, maybe like yourself, they eat throughout the day, but they will still experience the feeling of hunger. Hunger is just a feeling, and in fact, hunger is actually just a hormone. It's the hormone ghrelin. Once you understand this, you'll get to the next level of like your stoic development as a man, of being able to like stay away from these weird emotions that arise inside of us. Picture this, right? Hunger is something that controls people. It's like it has a throttle on the average person's neck. Hunger, lust, these kinds of things that, like, you know, these desires that come up. Just like we know that when lust comes up, we don't have to act on it. The same with hunger. Like, really, have you ever thought about this? When you're hungry, you don't have to eat. And the science actually proves that, okay, hunger is caused by the hormone ghrelin. Just understand this, right? This is the most interesting part. Ghrelin spikes up in your body at the same times every day. Hunger is not something that needs to be fixed by eating. It is an emotion, a feeling that arises at the same time every day, whether you eat or not. That's what's interesting, because ghrelin spikes up in rhythms and then goes back down after like 1 or 2 hours. So there's two things you can do. You can be a weak person, listen to the hunger, and, you know, like kind of like a middle-aged fat woman would be, and she's like, I'm hungry, so I've got to eat. The same way Jeffrey would say, I'm horny, so I've got to jack off. You know what happens if you don't eat when you're hungry? Remember the last time when you felt hungry and you were busy or whatever and you didn't eat, and then, you know, you didn't eat for most of the day, and then when you did eat, what happened? You got full pretty fast. When you don't eat when you're hungry, within like an hour, the hunger actually goes away. Think about that for a second. Most people's lives are ruled by hunger, by lust, by these random desires that pop up. I'm using lust here, even though we're talking about hunger and about breakfast and everything, just because it perfectly is like, it just works in the same way as hunger does, right? Most people's lives are controlled by this. Do you not want to be like that stoic version of yourself that isn't controlled by this? I sometimes like to imagine like losing everything. Like, imagine you're put into prison, like falsely, you're put into this like jail cell, and they've taken everything from you. They've taken your muscle because you can't train that much now. They've taken your all the books away. They've taken your clout, your social media followers, the money, the degree, whatever you've built up, right? What is one thing that you just can't lose? It's your skills, your character traits, your mindsets. Imagine yourself in that prison cell right now. Most guys would crack if that happened to them. But the guy that's voluntarily decided not to eat when he could, just think about how strong you would be. Like, have you ever thought about this? How strong the version of you would be, the version that has all this addictive food around him and doesn't indulge. How strong the version of you that has like all this like lustful triggers, porn, women around you, and you don't indulge. You realize how strong you could be, right? And so there is actually such a huge benefit to what's called fasting. Fasting is where basically you'll skip meals and you'll eat less times through the day. For the fitness guys here, I'll get into a bit more specific. You can still eat the same calories, so the same amounts, but we're changing the frequency of how much we're eating. Instead of being like this weird modern day human who eats around the clock, like that's so strange. Could you imagine our ancestors? Like think about it, humans have existed in as Homo sapiens, as like, you know, our current evolution for about 100,000 years, 100, 250,000, whatever years, right? Hundreds of thousands of years. Imagine for most of that time when we were kind of like, you know, the tribes around the world, we were cavemen, and then we basically like raped and killed all the other like sapiens, like all the other humans, Neanderthals and whatever. And then we went over to all the far lands. There's evidence that humans finally got to like Australia, and straight after that, all the big animals went extinct. Wonder why? Because humans killed them all and ate them. There's like, that's like the history of humanity, right? Can you imagine that version of us that didn't have a refrigerator, a freezer, to be eating 3, 4, 5 times a day, to be having multiple meals, to wake up and eat, to eat again 2 hours later, to have a nice little extra drink in the middle of like the hunt, like the work that we have, you know, school or whatever, to have like a nice little packaged lunch, then to come home and to have a pretty big dinner, then to eat just before bedtime as well. Could you imagine like your caveman ancestor, your primal ancestor living and eating like that? Probably not. If you just visualize it right now, what is natural for humans to eat? It's not eating little bits throughout the day. It's feasting. It's basically staying like literally hungry. It's feeling hunger. That is such a primal, powerful emotion. It's feeling hunger throughout the day and then having a massive feast where you basically eat till you're like absolutely full, and then you like 1, 2, 3, 5 hours later you go to sleep. That's what's more natural. Now imagine like people you know, maybe you, maybe your mother, wake up, a little bit of toast right away, bit of a cereal, 1 hour later, extra little snack, little chocolate bar with a coffee, 1 hour later, lunchtime, little sandwich with a little chocolate bar, an orange, and like some milk or some shit. 1 hour later, a little bit of like, you know, a little snack, protein bar, you know, I need a little slack. Do you want to be that person? Do you want to be the person who feels like they need to have snacks through the day? Like maybe I'm just offensive, maybe I'm an asshole. I have such little respect for like people who can't control hunger. Like when I'm just hanging out with someone and someone's like, oh, I'm hungry, and oh, I'm so hungry, I'm like, just fucking sit with it. It's actually not, it's like, imagine you're hanging out with a friend and he's like, oh, I'm horny, I'm gonna go to the toilet and jack off. You'd be like, that's fucking weird and disgusting and like inappropriate, right? It's literally the same thing with hunger. These feelings pop up, hunger and horniness pop up, and they go away after like 2-3 hours. You just have to like kind of sit with it, and you have to mentally reframe and put yourself above the craving. So that this is like how to overcome the hunger. But then we have to talk about the major psyop that we've all been through. And you have to understand one fundamental fact about scientists and doctors and data and research and all this bullshit, you know, like the official qualified people. They are human beings who operate with human nature. The scientists and doctors that we all trust are as broken as the rest of us. The doctor who's done some of these research studies, he jacks off underneath his fucking desk every now and then. He has like violent thoughts about like fucking his assistant or the other women who work in his hospital. What I'm saying by this is like the people that we've glamorized, you know, who give us health advice, like doctors and scientists and nutrition companies, they're all human. They're all broken just like the rest of us. When you go down the conspiracy theories route and you start seeing, very interesting, the cereal company Kellogg's, you know, Kellogg's, like they have like the cornflakes, whatever, they paid scientists to do studies on sugar that concluded that sugar is actually healthy for us. Very interesting. Very interesting that a company that pumps their products full of sugar sponsors scientists and pays them to make studies on sugar, which always find out that sugar's actually healthy for us. Doctors that say breakfast is an important part of the day and we should eat 5, 6, 10 times, like 4 small meals a day. Very interesting that they're all part of like the fucking Kellogg's Association bullshit, right? Now, I'm a normal guy. I'm just like a bro scientist. I'm just a guy who like reads stuff on the internet. You shouldn't blindly like trust me when it comes to these like health things. You should experiment by yourself. Here's the thing. There's a new phrase that I'm seeing which is so nice when it comes to things like science and health. And I want you to remember this, right? It's called N of 1. What that means is N, like the letter N of 1. That basically means 1 participant. You know how in like studies, like in experiments, they'll have like 50 participants, 5,000 participants. A lot of these studies by these doctors, these research articles are just bastardized by the doctor's weakness to take bribes and peer pressure from like the corporations that fund them. The most important thing, like research experiments that you can ever study, is not one that might have been fucking funded by some random company that's incentivizing the doctors who run the experiment to basically promote their products, but rather an N of 1 experiment, which basically means 1 participant who is the experimenter, the guinea pig. Who's the 1 participant? It's you, motherfucker. You try this. Fuck, like literally fuck any brain dead guy who ever fucking writes the sentence like, give me the quote, give me the research article. No. Why? What the fuck? That's so disgusting to be like, I'll trust you if you can just send me a link to some doctor that said that this is actually legit, because I can send you a link to some research paper that proves me right. And guess what? Anyone else can send you a link to some research paper that proves me wrong. So at that point, like there's for and against of every single health protocol, that you may as well not listen to these fucking scammers, these fucking manipulated like doctors who told your grandparents that smoking was healthy. They told your grandmother smoking was healthy. They told your mother that fat in her diet was a bad thing and that increased sugar was okay. And now what are they telling us? What are they telling us right now? Our generation, our children's generation, they're gonna look to our generation and be like, I can't believe doctors lied to my father. Think about it. Your great-grandfather, your great-grandmother, they literally were made to believe that smoking cigarettes was actually healthy. Just think about that for a second, right? They might not have smoked, but they probably did. They probably actually did. But think about how weird that is, that the people who were trusted to make people healthy were bribed with literally like a few $1,000s, and they convinced people in your fucking bloodline, like your ancestors, that one of the most harmful habits was actually healthy. Then they convinced your mother that having a low-fat diet was healthy. In the same way that the great cigarette scam was also the great low-fat scam. It hasn't ended. You do realize your son is going to think about you and be like, I can't believe he fell for it. There's some shit that they're telling us right now that we haven't really picked up on, and maybe it is how many times we eat. Maybe it is like what else could it be? Maybe you can comment below if you've been thinking like, yeah, like here's something that's quite widely pushed by like doctors and health scientists and stuff, especially in like the sort of conventional mainstream platforms, and like doctors in hospitals and like government bodies and shit. Yeah, this is one of the things that pisses me off, honestly. It's like people who have been put into positions of real authority, power, credibility, qualifications, and they abuse that because there's a bit of pressure for them to promote some corporation or some bullshit. So one of the things then that we're debating for this video is how many times a day should you eat? Should you skip breakfast? Is it healthy? I think as a complete fact, it is healthy to eat less meals per day. Bigger meals, but less. 1 meal a day seems to be like the optimal for humans, like for mixing health, but also with a bit of sustainability. Eating every other day is also a possibility. So that's what people do. Think about that. Some people out there will not eat today and they'll eat double tomorrow, or like way more tomorrow. And that's, again, think about it, like that actually makes sense. Like, can you not think about how that makes sense as a human being, as an animal? There were some days that our ancestors didn't hunt. They got like a handful of small blueberries, that was it. There were some days they didn't get to eat. There were some days where they may have had one big meal or even a small meal just before they were going to sleep, and some days 2 days in a row where they didn't eat. And that actually is so healthy. Even just before this, I'll be honest with you, because it's kind of embarrassing, I was on Instagram, I was just scrolling for like a few minutes whilst I was having a shit, and I saw like 2 reels from doctors that I trust. Like, there's not a lot of doctors that I have a respect for. I think most of that entire sort of official space is just full of these fucking scammers who are fat as fuck, and they can't even do a burpee, they can't even do 15 push-ups, and they're going to tell people about health. They're all fat, they've got BMI of 30, and they're going to tell other people about health. And I seem like the weird scammer for saying this, right? Because I'm not qualified. I'm some like random YouTuber, but I'm brimming with health. I am so healthy compared to the people who should be the health icons of our society. But there's a few doctors that I trust, and I've seen things that they've shared, which is like basically how fasting is kind of like the miracle cure for avoiding sickness. There was one reel that said that if you fast routinely, the chances of you getting cancer is way, way, way slower than the people who eat around the clock. And it makes sense, right? There's a quote by, let's have a look now. To eat when sick. There was a quote I saw, I don't know what exactly it was. Oh, here. Famous ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, some Greek guy, like, one of those like philosophers or some shit, right? And the quote is, "To eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness." This is a quote from like 1,000 years ago. To eat when you are sick is to feed the sickness. You know, when the last time you've been sick and your mother's come up, no offense, but she's ignorant as fuck with this, and she said, "Oh, you've got to eat something, it'll help, you've got to eat something." Think about this quote from someone thousands of years ago, hundreds, I don't know when this guy was alive, right? To eat when you are sick is to feed your sickness. Now, this was like ages ago. Now we see Instagram reels of doctors who are actually quite trustworthy, who are more of the based doctors telling you to eat like red meat and eggs and stuff. And they're saying things like, oh yeah, if you fast, you'll increase your longevity, like how long you're healthy for, how long you live for. And you'll also lower your chance of cancer. And I don't know how true this is. I messaged one of the doctors. His name's Dr. Chafee. He's actually a doctor, a teacher inside of my online school as well. But I messaged him and I said, I saw this reel, or one of the comments, that said that cancer can only survive if there's glucose like being sort of ate in the body. This was a random comment from someone, so it might not be true, but I asked the doctor, he's not replied just yet, if that's true. But it seems to be the case to me, and I've seen this in a wide variety of people, trustworthy doctors. I've seen like spiritual guys, like, Buddhists and Hindus talk about and even Muslims talking about the benefits of fasting, right? All Muslims know this, like there's a reason why they fast for an entire month. Is because there's supreme health benefits to not being a gluttonous fat fuck who's eating 24/7. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, think about, have you seen the movie WALL-E? WALL-E's like this cartoon movie of like, it's like the end of the earth and humans are just become like morbidly obese. They're just kind of like floating around like fat motherfuckers, and they just basically like, they've got AI robots feeding them 24/7. Like, they're just fat as fuck, just eating constantly. We're not far from that reality. Fat, like, even people who aren't like necessarily that fat, they just wake up and they're just fucking eating, digesting food, wondering why they feel tired all the time. You know how you've heard about the benefits of like not being lustful and not coming so much? It makes you feel like, a bit more masculine. It increases testosterone. You've heard those things, right? Like being on no fap, no porn, no masturbation, semen retention makes you feel like kind of like healed and healthy. And you might have researched a bit more of the sort of spiritual benefits with semen retention. It's actually really good for like your skin. It's good for like your health and your cognitive focus, whatever. It's the same thing with being hungry and being empty. The quote I like is, You want to have an empty stomach and full balls as a man. Empty stomach, when you're physically hungry, even though you get that thought of like, oh man, I'm hungry. Once you take that away and stop thinking that you need to eat when you get that hunger feeling, you can start to really perform better in work. You might, like, there'll be some people who watch this be like, no, when I'm hungry, I'm just so distracted. But that's like the same guy who's convinced himself that when he's horny, he's got to jack off, right? What you need to do when you get these emotions, the hunger, the horniness, you need to basically step out of it and kind of control the emotion and feel good about the fact that you feel hungry right now. When you have psychologically changed what the meaning of that feeling is, and you start to crave the feeling of being hungry because you know that, yeah, it feels good to be like light, to be empty, I can be fast, I can move. That's like the hunter mode is being engaged inside of you. Think about it, like when would have people hunted? Like when would your ancestors have went on a hunt? They would have been hungry. Do you see like the weird, like I don't know if this is getting to you, but like, do you not feel like connected to like the people in your ancestry, in your bloodline? Do you not see how much of a powerful, weird, like powerful feeling hunger is? And in the modern day, we don't feel it. It reminds me of cold. You know, recently you've heard more things about cold exposure, ice baths, cold showers, and it turns out it's actually really healthy for us. You've seen this in the last few years, like ice baths and cold showers are popular, right? Could you imagine 10 years ago, there was almost no one really talking about it, and it was like your mother's fucking blah blah wisdom saying, oh no, if you stay out when it's cold, you'll get it, you'll catch a sickness, you'll be cold. Turns out, no, that was completely fucking ignorant and wrong. The more cold you experience, the healthier you'll be. You should be doing ice baths, cold therapy, everything, right? It's interesting. Like, think about the primal sensation of feeling cold, of feeling hunger, of feeling lustful, feeling horniness. These are the feelings, drives inside of us that in the modern day we have completely gotten rid of. We don't feel cold because we have like the heated apartments, we have like the thick clothing and everything. We don't go outside naked, we don't go outside without shoes and everything. We don't feel hunger because we eat all the time. We run away from these primal emotions, and then we wonder why we feel so depressed and like we're all part of this, this modern day fucking depressed generation. This is the cure to depression. People don't like using that phrase of like, like a powerful phrase of like, how do you cure depression? You live like a healthy fucking human being. You experience the feeling of hunger, of horniness, of cold, of play, laughter, joy, and love every single day. That's it. They're like, people are like taking fucking medication. People take drugs, medication. They're all depressed. And it's like, it's as simple as living like a normal fucking human being. So for this video, because I've done so many videos on like horniness and everything, but this video is all about hunger. And this student of mine, or this guy in the community, which is the top link if you want to join, his name's Ath Ray, and he said, I've looked through the research studies and seen that breakfast isn't even good for you and skipping it is actually healthier. That's true. Now, one point I just want to make right now is someone might say, oh, but like, what about for bodybuilding? Like, isn't it healthy to have protein around the clock? This is where it gets a bit tricky, because it's definitely healthier to have to be fasting and to have less meals through the day to feel hunger. But when your goal is bodybuilding and building muscle mass and gaining size, sometimes you can't really fast because you do have to eat around the clock. But that is like a hit to your health that you're willing to take. A brutal fact you need to accept is like, bodybuilders are not healthy. It is not a healthy sport at all. Like, just because like, the gym seems like a healthy habit, and yeah, going to the gym, lifting weights is, but once you step out of being the guy who goes to the gym to kind of look good to being the guy who's like a bodybuilder wanting to maximize muscle mass, at that point you are getting into unhealthy levels. Like, all bodybuilders will actually tell you the truth. It is an unhealthy sport, like just like most competitive sports are. Once you're taking a sport very seriously, it is often very unhealthy. Just like martial arts, you might think, wait, martial arts is unhealthy. No. For the casual guy who goes a few times a week, it's so healthy. He's developing new skills, he's burning calories, he's doing cardio, he's competing, he's progressing, he's got a social life. Awesome. When there's a guy who's like doing fights 3, 4, 5, 10 times a year, and he's getting CTE, brain damage, and he's getting like 2-3 injuries per year, his elbow keeps, his shoulder snaps out of place or some shit. At that point, it's not like a healthy thing, but fine, it's his full-time career, whatever. So you need to figure out right now, do you want to be a pro bodybuilder Do you want to step on stage and basically this is your life? This is literally like the thing that means everything to you. You are literally practicing the bodybuilding poses every day. This isn't just about looking good, like looks maxing. This isn't about looks maxing. This is literally your life. If you want to be a pro bodybuilder, then do whatever it takes to maximize muscle mass, which is like eating around the clock, getting ready for a competition. That also means you're spending like half an hour a day literally just stood there in your underwear practicing the poses that you're going to do on stage, right? That's the level of dedication. If that's you, then yeah, sure, you should be eating protein around the clock. You should be eating 6, 7, 8 meals a day. You should be eating right before bedtime. Maybe like some bodybuilders, sound stupid, but they sometimes even like wake up super early, eat, and then go back to sleep, whatever. But chances are you're not actually a pro bodybuilder. You're a guy who wants to build a good amount of muscle mass, but you're doing it more for like looks maxing, right? There's the bodybuilders who are doing it to step on stage in like, little fucking underwear, tan up, wear like brown tan, flex in front of other guys, and they want to try and win the trophy. Then there's like the guys like us who are doing bodybuilding, but not to compete, but just for looks maxing. If you're going more of the looks maxing route, you want to build the aesthetic body, you want to look good, take good pictures, whatever. I actually think health maxing is the better way. Trying to like be like living like a bodybuilder when you're just doing this just for like aesthetics and looks maxing, you're starting to take a hit to your health. You're starting to mess up sleep, your social life. You're starting to wake up and then eat right away, and then your brain's kind of like tired and sluggy from like when you're trying to work or study and everything. So just be careful of that and taking like bodybuilding to the next level, because by all means you should train hard. You should have good nutrition. But the problem, what this guy is going through, is when you eat in the morning, you will be mentally less sharp. It's just a pure fact of the world that like when you eat, your digestive system is hyperactive to digest the food that you've just eaten. That's one of the hardest, like biggest processes that your body does, is digesting food. And you want that to be very concise. Like you want to digest food a few hours before bedtime and then it's done. Okay, that's it. You don't want to be digesting food 24/7. You don't want to be waking up, eating, digesting food through the day, eat again, eat again, eat again, eat again. Your entire day is filled with this sense of like lethargy, this slight slowness. Like you're a young man, you should be brimming with health. You should be able to like at any given point through the day have like the zestful energy to drop down into like 20 push-ups, 50 push-ups, right? And you might think, well, I can do 50 push-ups, but what I mean is, imagine, is then like parts of your day where you actually feel kind of like tired and slow and lethargic? Not around nighttime, because that's normal. When you're sleepy, fine. But basically when you wake up till around like 8, 9, 10 p.m, you should be brimming with energy. There shouldn't be a moment where you're kind of tired and you just need to like lie down a little bit. That's not healthy. That's not natural. It's only normal now because of average people who are eating through the day. But to get a random crash of like tiredness for a young man, it doesn't seem natural. It doesn't make any sense. That's happening because people are just eating 24/7. And so here's the thing, right? Like I said, if bodybuilding's the only thing that matters for you, it is like you want to be a pro bodybuilder, you want to literally step on stage, whatever, then fine, go maximize that. But if you're only doing this for looks maxing, it doesn't make sense to have the rest of your life to suffer as well, because I'm telling you from experience, the version of you that wakes up and eats before he goes to school or work or trying to do business work is absolutely going to perform worse and have like a slower brain and less nice kind of like insights than the version of you that doesn't eat. I noticed this so much myself. Like even this work is, it's fairly easy. I'm just talking to the camera with no script. What I notice is if I eat before I record, whether even it's a pretty healthy meal, even if it's like, just eggs and some beef, some like natural human food, no bullshit, I'll still notice I'm a bit slower, I'm a bit burping, I'm a bit, like I'm stuttering the word a little bit. I also recently, like I've been training kickboxing a lot, like 2-3 hours a day. And I've noticed that when I wake up earlier and I eat before I train compared to the times when I'm waking up and I don't eat, I actually perform worse because you're just digesting food. Like food should be digesting when you're doing nothing else, right? So doesn't it make sense that like when you wake up, when you're going to the gym, school or business work, you should be fasted. You should just be empty and hungry. Then In the evening time, you should have a period of digestion, and that's when you're not doing anything important. That's when you can have a big meal with friends, with family, and that's when you can, you can start spending some time like talking to people, relaxing, whatever. It doesn't make sense to be in like rest and digest mode through the day when you're trying to conquer. It makes more sense to be hungry. The same with like your horniness, right? It makes more sense for you to wake up and be horny and be like, like not lustful, but like, you get what I mean, horny through the day. And if you are gonna ejaculate, let's say you've got like a girlfriend or a wife, you're gonna have sex, it makes more sense to do that at nighttime, right? It makes more sense, okay, like straight afterwards you're gonna fall asleep together. Okay, fair enough. You don't want to wake up, have sex, or jack off and then literally blow your load first thing in the morning, and you've lost that like zestful kind of energy, emotion that was gonna make you go out and hunt, right? You don't want to lose that, do you? The same way, when you wake up and jack off, it's not like a good start of your day. I'm telling you, eating is the same way. And there'll be some people, some really ignorant, like stupid people who'll watch this, and they've basically never even tried to fast before properly. And they'll just be criticizing it, just saying like, nope, that sounds unhealthy. Nope, you've got to be eating around the clock. That's what my mother told me, whatever. But if you give this a try, and you just go and experiment on some days, if you do usually eat breakfast, you wake up, don't eat breakfast, see how sharp your brain is when you're doing work. You'll get the feeling of hunger, but you don't have to listen to it. Don't give these feelings, these desires, like these drives inside of you, any power. You don't want to be like the fat motherfucker who's like, oh, I'm hungry, so I have to eat. You don't want to be the Jeffrey who says, I'm horny, so I've got to go jack off. You want to be one step higher than that. So this guy, he goes on to write, but I'm still 17, and when I try to ask my parents to skip breakfast, they don't agree and give it anyways. I showed them research studies and educated them, but they hate that now. What can I do to let them allow me to skip it? So basically, he's 17 years old, he doesn't want to eat breakfast, and his parents are kind of like forcing him, which is a shitty situation to be in. He's tried the nice way, which is to, show them the education, the information that he's seen. They're not going to listen to that because they're just like ignorant people. And I don't mean to be offensive, but this is the case with a lot of parents. They're just kind of like ignorant people. They don't keep up with the latest like research and the latest like the health influencers who are really actually like educated, and they just follow whatever their stupid fat doctors has learned 20-30 years ago in a textbook that was a complete and utter psyop from like the health industry. So if you've got parents who are forcing you to do something unhealthy, like for example eat shit food, eat around the clock, they won't let you eat eggs, they won't let you eat meat because of like it's unhealthy, too many eggs, whatever bullshit, what I would say is, this is gonna sound crazy, sneak it. You know how like young boys should be adventurous? You know how sometimes you've seen like adventurous movies of like young boys that like snuck out of the house and they got into trouble, and they jumped out of their window or something, then they went on like an adventure with their friends or their little girlfriend, and that was like a really big story. That's how you should be living as like a young man. If your parents have control over you, which isn't even about like your age, because you can be 14 and they could have control over you, but there's also 14-year-olds that actually have their own freedom, and there's also 21-year-olds that still live with their parents and they're still getting controlled by them, right? But like basically, once you feel like you're kind of like a conscious young man and you want to take life by your own hands, you have to start like realizing, like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like kind of like how to manipulate people. It's just a shame, but it's like you have to, like, if you go up to your parents and say, no, I want to eat 4 eggs a day, they'll say, no, you've got to eat 2, and they'll start getting aggressive towards you, right? Now, you can just go listen to them and be like, oh, well, I'm going to be respectful towards my parents and listen to them. But if you know as a young man if something is right or wrong, and you want to start to live by your values, and it's also something that, actually is healthy for you, it's a good thing, it's not like you're doing something stupid, then maybe it's just time to start lying. I know this sounds crazy, and it's like I'm basically telling you to lie to your parents, but when your parents say like, no, you can only eat 2 eggs a day, you say to them, okay, fine. And then when they're not looking, you go into the kitchen and cook yourself another 2, right? Like I had a guy on a call once. He was like, I think 17 or 18 years old, and he said his parents won't let him go to the martial arts gym because they thought it was like dangerous. And I said to him, like, just go and don't tell them. Just say that you've been to the normal gym. Just say that you went out on a run. And I saw like his kind of sheepish smile, like he almost started smiling a bit because he was like, oh yeah, like I could. And I said to him, like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Okay, let's say they find out and it's like, oh yeah, you disobeyed us. You know, they'll argue, they'll shout. But these kind of parents, they argue and shout anyway, right? This is the same, like, you know, the kind of parents who force you to go to university. And so many of our, like, our boys here and so many young guys will listen to it because they're like, oh, but, you know, they'll shout at me and they'll get angry if I don't go to university, even though they believe they don't really want to go. I say to them, listen, you go to university, it's not like the arguments and the shouting are going to stop. They'll just start shouting and arguing about something else. Parents like this, like, they'll always be chatting, like yapping, like chatting some shit. So you may as well go live the life that you know is better rather than just living underneath mommy's fucking control. Like, when you're in your mid-20s and you're slightly more of like a little bitch who gets less respect from men because, you know, you started this journey later. You like listened too much to mommy. I'm telling you right now, like when you get to like real man age, other real guys, you know, like we're talking mid-20s and whatever, they don't respect like a mommied man. They don't respect like the guy who like listens to people even though he knows that what they said was wrong. So there needs to become a point as a man where you start to live life by your own terms and you have to take the shit that comes with that. So your parents will get angry. They'll shout at you and say, no, you can't eat meat, you can't have eggs, but you just do it anyway. And then let's say your parents find out, they see you cooking eggs one day, they're like, wait, why are you cooking them? Why are you cooking by yourself? Why you've already had eggs, you're having too much. You just act like a retard. You say like, oh, I was hungry. That's it. You don't, actually, 4 eggs a day for cholesterol. You know, cholesterol is not even unhealthy. I saw this. You don't try and do that because they're not going to fucking listen. These types of people, I don't mean to be offensive towards your parents, but these types of people, they're not like intelligent enough that you can sit them down and say, okay, this is what this research has shown. Here's this lecture I saw by a scientist which proves that cholesterol is actually good for you. A lot of people are not on that level of like cognitive intelligence that they can sit down, see something that contradicts what they believe already and update their beliefs. A lot of people just are not intelligent enough for that. So you have to act like an idiot, like keep it simple. You don't sit them down and show them the research. You literally just go cook the eggs by yourself. And if you ever get caught, you don't try and convince them eggs are actually healthy. You just say, oh, I was hungry. And they're like, oh, but you've already had eggs today. Just why are you making more eggs? It's not it's unhealthy to eat so much. You just say, oh, I felt like eating eggs. They're like, oh, well, you better not do that again. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sorry, mom. Do you want to watch TV with me? That's it. Then tomorrow do the same thing, but just try not to get caught. That's it. This is like right now, this sounds crazy if you're like a teenager. This is just what life as a man is supposed to be like. Like this is almost practice for your girlfriend in the future and your wife as well. Women and parents will just test you. And basically the skill of being a man and having respect from people is doing what you're going to do, even if people test you and kind of say like, no, you shouldn't do that. And they shout at you for it. This is like what you've already heard, like, you know, women test men. When you get a girlfriend, she'll test you. She'll shit test you. What that means is like she will try to basically say some shit about what you believed and the action that you took, and you need to just have like this kind of shrugged kind of like confidence where you're like, oh, but I wanted to do that. Then no one, like, they'll still argue with you, but it's weird, they'll have more respect for you. Like, you've got to remember, a lot of people, like, this is a weird point I'm making, but it is something like an important lesson for you. A lot of the people you meet in your life, your relationship with them is going to look like this. They will have you by the neck and they will just be squeezing. Your action, your response of that is how you block, like, you know, like a rear naked chokehold. The way you do that is you keep your chin down and you fight for your life by kind of pushing their arm away. So if someone tries to choke you, you're constantly pushing them away. What's interesting is when someone gains the inch and gets a tighter grip on your neck, it's way harder to take them off. You want to stop someone from choking you far away, right? You want to stop them up here, up here, up here. If they're already here, if they're already got the rear naked chokehold and it's like their forearms underneath your neck, you're basically fucked at that point, right? It's very hard to break out of that. This is what life is like your relationships are like with a lot of people. They'll just have like, they'll want a tighter and tighter and tighter grip on your neck, and the tighter you allow it, the way harder it is to eventually get it to loosen up. Think about it. The version of you that listens to your parents when they say no more eggs from now on, you're not going to eat eggs, the version of you that listens to that, they've got a tighter grip. Next month, they're going to say some other bullshit, and again, then eventually you're 21 years old, 22, 25 years old, and you're not even allowed to move out as a grown man because your parents are too scared of the world for you. Do you understand that even though there'll be arguments when you push away their throttle, and they'll be like, oh, but eggs are unhealthy. Didn't I tell you that you can't eat eggs? Didn't I tell you that you've got to eat breakfast? But you've got to push that fucking throttle away, that grip on your neck. You've got to ease it up over time. There's always going to be arguments whether they're tightening or they're loosening. There's going to be arguments with these type of people no matter what. But the only difference is they've got a less grip on your neck if you are sort of pushing away and doing the thing that you realize you're supposed to do. Does this make sense? Like the more you listen to your parents when they're saying bullshit, like not when they're like intelligent people and they're telling you, yeah, eat more eggs, eat more red meat because it's healthy for human beings. There'll be some like unintelligent people commenting below saying, wait, Hamza's saying red meat's healthy, but it increases cholesterol. Those are people who haven't done much research in the last few years. But when you've got like healthy, educated parents, like they'll want you to be health maxing, they'll want you to be eating right. You get my point, right? But when you don't have parents like that, you need to get used to just fighting their grip on your neck. That means that there's going to be arguments, but the thing is, there's arguments anyway, so it's like you're not losing anything. So he asks, what can I do to let them allow me to skip it? It's not about telling them to let you skip it. It's just fucking skipping it. Think about it. There's the version of you that goes up to mommy and daddy and says, I want to eat more eggs. I don't want to eat breakfast. And they'll say no. Then there's the version of you that just makes the fucking eggs and eats them. Do you see the difference? There's the version of you that just doesn't show up for breakfast. Do you see the difference? There's a version of you that sits down, pours like a coffee or something, and doesn't eat the breakfast. And when they say, oh, why aren't you eating? You say, oh, I feel sick. I don't want to eat. They're like, no, eat something. You're like, oh, no, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to eat. No, I'm not going to eat. You don't try, oh, this one study, like this Hamza video. No, you don't try and fucking convince people with education for people who don't like to be educated, right? Think about it. The kind of parents that we're talking about, unfortunately, don't give a fuck about knowledge and education, right? You know this. Otherwise, like, we wouldn't be arguing about, like, your parents won't let you fast or your parents won't let you eat eggs and healthy stuff like that. So if your parents are, unfortunately, ignorant, uneducated, and they don't really care about learning, trying to convince them by teaching them the knowledge that you've learned isn't gonna fucking work, because they don't give a fuck about education, about, learning. These aren't people who are on like their own self-improvement development. They don't give a fuck, right? They're just complacent. So you can't try to convince someone who doesn't care about learning by showing them research papers. You have to play on their level, which is basically like no offense, but you have to play on like the retard level. You have to, like, instead of trying to convince your parents, oh yeah, eggs are actually unhealthy, here's a study that proves that cholesterol, like the great lie of cholesterol, is actually complete and utter bullshit, and cholesterol doesn't even go up when you eat eggs or anything. Like there's a scientist right now who just ate like 600 eggs, 600, and his cholesterol didn't even go up. Cholesterol is just a big fucking scam, basically, like, how the doctors have said it to us. And then the reason why they mention that is because they get commission when they give you cholesterol lowering drugs. Think about that for a second, right? So the people who are in this system, and they're so, like, basically buffoons who fall for this shit, who just listen to whatever the fucking doctor says instead of, like, the people who, are coming on to these, like, decentralized platforms and telling the truth of, like, oh yeah, like, eating eggs doesn't actually increase cholesterol. Or if it does, it's actually a healthy thing for you. You don't try and convince your parents of this research, because if they cared, they would be interested in it already. You just play their game. You sit down, you don't eat anything, and you say, oh, no, I'm not going to eat today. No, I'm not hungry. That's it. You make the eggs yourself. And when they ask you, you say, oh, I just felt like eating. Well, that's it. I was hungry. He updates his post here and he says, if I can't skip it, what are some no-carb vegetarian foods? It'd be better if it was an Indian meal, but anything works. Also, I can't eat eggs. So if you've got any meal ideas, let me know down below. Here's another conspiracy theory for you as an Indian, right? I'm Pakistani, but like he said he's an Indian. So this is fucking, like, this might piss you off if you're watching this, if you're Indian, or if you're just watching this and this might be interesting, right? There's a conspiracy theory that, you know, Indians don't eat meat, right? A lot of them are vegetarian. And the conspiracy theory is that that was actually a subversion tactic from the British. So the British went over to India, colonized them, raped their women. This is why a lot of Indians these days have got like white names. Like I've got Indian friends named like fucking Dylan and stuff, like white people names, right? So the white man went over there, fucked their women, and then fed them vegetables and grains and told them that meat was like bad and sinful for them. And you might think, okay, that kind of is interesting, but no, it can't be true, because like Indians have been eating like vegetarian food for thousands of years because of like Hinduism. But it's like, who actually says that though? Who said that? Just because, like, you know, there's like, you know, some drawings or a book that said that. History is always manipulated by the winners, right? History is not truth. It is literally just like a constructive storytelling by the colonizer. Just think about what I've just said. History is constructive storytelling by the colonizer. It is not the objective truth of what happened. It is what the colonizer, the winner, wants you to believe happened. So is it true that in Indian history, in Hindu history, that they didn't eat meat? Is that definitely true? Because none of us can actually prove it. No book can prove it, because people can just fucking lie. People can, you know, manipulate, create like a fake book or whatever, fake like documents to prove that, oh yeah, people were not eating meat, whatever, like that, right? Because it's interesting. Imagine you wanted to control a nation, like you take over like a tribe or like a country, and you don't want to kill the people there because you want them to work for you, you want them to keep developing, but you don't want them to be as strong as your people. There's things that you'll do. You'll rape their women, first of all. You'll take their children. But for the fighting age men, what do? You still want them to be relatively healthy. You don't want them to die. You want them to basically be slaves and, you know, to keep working. But you definitely don't want them to be strong enough to revolt. Since you want to keep them alive, what do you feed them? Do you feed them things that increase testosterone? No. Think about it. Fuck no, right? You don't feed them eggs. You don't feed them red meat. You're not gonna like feed them things that will make them stronger, right? Like, think about this. If you colonize the fucking country, imagine you own like a massive army, and you colonize the country like, I don't know, 10,000 years ago or something, 2,000 years ago. You colonized the country, took over. If you wanted to weaken the people in that country enough so that they would listen to you, but not enough that they would die, and you didn't want the men to be strong enough to revolt and fight, you'd feed them stuff that kind of made them bloated and slow and burping, wouldn't you? You'd feed them brain fog food. You'd feed them grains and bread and oats and carbs and things that spike the glucose, the insulin. You'd feed them those. You would not be feeding them eggs, like foods that increase testosterone. How interesting is that, right? So that's like just a conspiracy theory. Maybe it's not true, but I watched something about this once and I was like, holy shit, that's so interesting. The white man went over there and convinced the Indians that they shouldn't be eating meat. I remember I said this to an Indian guy once and his jaw dropped, because for him, it just felt intuitively like it was actually true. And I saw him straight after that. He was a vegetarian for all of his life. Started to eat more meat because he was like, yeah, like it makes sense. Like, what if it was a fucking psyop? There's foods that genuinely make you a stronger person, and they are meat and eggs. It is just a truth. Imagine if like for your son, for example, imagine if your son had to fight to the death when he was 12 years old against another boy. Like, imagine like this was like some weird rite of passage in like the tribe that we live in. You have a son, he's like 0 years old, like, you know, he's a baby. And you know, okay, when he's 12, he'll be put into a pit and he has to kill the other boy, or he has to die. And the other boy is like, you know, another 12-year-old, right? What food would you feed him for those 12 years? Would you be feeding him fucking like sugar, fructose, syrup? You wouldn't be feeding him any of this shit. Cereal, oats, pasta. You would feed him strictly red meat and eggs. That it's just intuitive inside of you. You know that's what you'd feed him. You'd feed him just meat and eggs, as much of it as possible, right? You'd want him to like to be as heavy as possible, you know, as strong as possible. But you wouldn't want him to be fat. You wouldn't want him to be bloated. You wouldn't want him to be getting like carb crashes. You know, like the kind of people who are just tired at like 11 a.m. You'd want him to just have high as fuck testosterone, like that thick jawline of like the white people diet with a lot of steak and eggs. It's very interesting, right? So he mentions here, like, it'd be better if it was an Indian meal. I'd tell you it'd be fucking worse if it was an Indian meal. The way to see how foods affect people is to look at what the average person from a certain culture looks like. There's a reason, no offense, but to like my South Asians, the Pakistanis, Indians, there's a reason why our like natural physiques are fucking trash. We probably have the worst physiques, like naturally, like, you know, without training, without weightlifting, than every other kind of man on this fucking planet. Why? Because Indian and Pakistani food, South Asian food, is completely like low, like it's just fucking like it just gives you a weird ugly gut. I know Pakistani is actually a lot better than Indian has one of the worst natural physiques out there. Pakistan actually has one of the highest natural testosterone. I'm not too sure why that is, but yeah, it's very interesting, right? And then when you look at like what an average like natural white man looks like compared to a natural Indian, it's like a two different species. Indian guy, you can just imagine, has got this weird pregnant looking bloat with skinnier arms. White guy, you can imagine, is just stronger. If you made them wrestle like tug of war, the white man's gonna win. It's just as simple as that. It's as simple as that, because what's the natural white man eating? He's eating meat, eggs, milk, potatoes, and cheese. Now, of course, like, you know, the modern day, it's bastardized. You know, white guys eating fish and chips, Indians eating fucking vegan sausages or some weird shit, right? But if you just imagine what things would have been like 100 years ago, before like complete explosion of like processed foods. Maybe that's a shit point, but it's just something I like to speculate. Is like, if what does like a natural untrained man look like from each country who eats the authentic sort of cultural cuisine? Indian is probably the single worst diet for that. It's just carbs and breads and stuff, but there's also no meat. At least with Pakistan, it's like, it's very similar. It's, you know, it's the naan, it's the breads, it's the curries and stuff, but at least there's a bit of meat inside of that. It's not much, but there's at least a bit of meat. So he says it would be better if it was an Indian meal. I would tell you, no, it'd be fucking worse if it was an Indian meal. He says also, I can't eat eggs. I would ask, okay, why? If he's like allergic or something, okay, fair enough. But if he's saying I can't eat eggs because like mommy and daddy said so, I'd tell him, okay, grow a pair of balls and fucking just cook the eggs yourself. Defy your parents, because it's time that you actually have some respect for yourself. What are no carb vegetarian foods? Naturally, there isn't really, because vegetables are a source of carbs, and that can be fine. Like, you know, vegetables don't necessarily have to be unhealthy, although there is pretty good evidence that they are, which is very interesting. That's like a conversation for another day. Maybe you're not ready for that conversation just yet, because you've been told all this time the vegetables are healthy. There's actually a growing amount of really healthy, like supremely healthy people out here, like, you know, just in the world, and influencers and stuff, who are showing that they haven't ate vegetables for years, and they are brimming with health, testosterone, fitness, muscle, everything. The doctor that I mentioned, who's a teacher inside of my online school, he hasn't ate vegetables for like 10 years, 15 years, and he's like the most jacked, athletic doctor, like one of the most like that I've ever seen in my life. So it's just something to bear in mind. It's the great psyop of like 5 vegetables and fruits a day. Maybe that is our generation's like cigarettes are healthy, low fat is healthy, which sounds crazy. Wait, Hamza, you saying vegetables are unhealthy? In practicality, like overall, when you see the kind of people who eat a vegetarian diet, well, yeah, they are like weaker, psyop, they are like skinnier neck, low testosterone, like softer, more servant style people. So yeah, my opinions with like diet sounds really fucking crazy when you haven't done much like based research in this niche. So I don't blame anyone who's kind of ignorant, who's in the comments saying like, wait, this is fucking ridiculous. Hamza's saying that meat is healthy, but it's not, increases cholesterol. Hamza's saying that vegetables are unhealthy, but my doctor and my mother and the government said that they were. So I don't blame anyone who this is like confusing them, thinking, wait, what the fuck does this guy know? But do your own research, go Google, go YouTube, why are vegetables unhealthy? And you'll see a myriad of reasons why they are. They're sprayed with pesticides. It's said that fruit is healthy, but it's actually quite unnatural. The fruit that we have these days is not natural. It's genetically modified. It's made like 10 times sweeter than our ancestors. Our ancestors, like the banana that they had was smaller, bitter, and it had like 50 seeds inside of it. We have bananas that have more sugar than a can of Coke, and we think that it's still healthy because it's like nature's candy. But sugar is sugar, and the fructose from the fruit still acts relatively in the same way. It's not as bad as having some cancerous fucking candy bar, sure, but it's still something that's gonna fuck up your inside and skyrocket your insulin. And then people will say like, oh, but no one's ever gotten fat from like fruit and vegetables. Yes, they fucking have. Look at like, no offense, but like, look at the physiques of like the Indian population. They only eat vegetables, and people who eat like a lot of fruit, there's 70 calories in an apple, 100 calories in a banana, and it's just sugar calories, right? It's like that. Like, fat comes from the insulin spike, not necessarily even from the calories. Calories dictates weight gain or loss, but that's just weight gain. Fat gain or loss is triggered by your insulin hormone. Insulin hormone is turned on when you eat sugar. So yeah, there's a whole, like the thing is, like, everyone in the sort of diet space is going to argue with each other. So I don't blame you for not wanting to listen to me right now. But this is where we come back to that phrase I said to you, which was N off 1. You need to run your own experiments and see where you feel best. So there's no point listening to me and thinking like, oh yeah, Hamza's wrong or Hamza's right. Rather, you need to go and see what happens when you don't eat breakfast in the morning, and see how sharp you are when you do your work. Because I'm so sharp personally, like my brain is just so switched on when I do my work, when I haven't ate anything. So for me, I know in my truth, in my heart, that fasting is a good thing, that eating breakfast is a bad thing. For someone else, it might not be. Like, what I will tell you is, like, there's a girl I know who, like, she can't focus when she's hungry, and I try and coach her through. I'm like, yeah, just ignore it. It's the same thing as like, trying to explain to her, like, when a guy feels horny, he doesn't have to jack off, whatever. But for her, it's like, no, she's just can't focus on anything else. And it's like, I'm trying to help her with it, but it's like, yeah, fair enough. Like, she's adamant she has to eat, and she's like, oh, but for women it's different, whatever. So yeah, like, there's people who, it'll be different for. So instead of having a specific rule like eating this is healthy, eating this is unhealthy, fasting is healthy, it's not healthy, whatever, run your own experiment and figure it out for yourself. See what happens for the next 4 days where you don't eat in the morning and you just have maybe like a black coffee. See what happens if you only eat one meal a day. Just for that, like, how about just as a trial, because it's safe to do this, just for the next few days, only eat one massive meal at 5 p.m. If your parents are going to say like, why aren't you eating breakfast? Just say to them like, oh, I'm not really hungry right now. I'm not really hungry. I'll eat later on. I'll eat in like an hour. Then in an hour, they're like, why haven't you ate? You're like, oh, I'll eat in like a couple hours. I'm just not really that hungry. Then at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., whenever in that block, you say, oh yeah, now I'm really hungry. I want to eat loads. Just see what happens. 3 days, 4 days, see how that feels. Is it too uncomfortable? Did you sleep well? Did you not sleep well? How did you feel in the day before that? Did that feeling of hunger come in? Did you feel kind of good about it? Did you cue yourself to think, yeah, like hunger is like a primal emotion. I feel like a caveman. This is good. Or did it just feel like fucking annoying? And but also, like, did it feel annoying because you're weak and you were craving food and substance and you were bored? You're so used to just consuming all the time. Is that not a skill that you want to overcome? Like a skill of like not needing constant stimulation, not needing food? Just the same, like, in a way that you don't want to have like ejaculations and porn all the time. You might also want to train not having food all the time. There's a couple of comments as well. Bobby is the top comment, and he said, you're almost a legal adult. You don't have to listen to every little thing they say. Simply just don't eat the meal when they give it to you. I agree with that. And the original poster, he replied and said, I've been thinking of that, but it kind of hurts to disobey them. Like, since they're not even mean, almost too nice. But I was on the fence and you've helped me get over it. I'll try that from now on. What I would suggest is that, yeah, definitely don't do this in a disrespectful way. If your parents are basically like telling you to eat something that you feel is not good for you, say it in like the most dumb way possible. Don't try and sit them down and say, oh, it's not healthy, whatever, because it's just, a lot of parents aren't very receptive to that. Just say it in the stupidest, most simple way. Oh, I'm not really hungry right now. I don't really want to eat this right now. Oh, I'm sick of eating this. Sorry, mom. Like, I'm sick of eating this. And they're like, oh, come on, eat it. I've already made it. You're like, oh, I really, I just can't. I just don't want to. They're like, but what else are you going to eat? To be like, oh, I really want some more eggs. I want some more eggs. They're like, oh, but it's unhealthy. You should only eat 2 eggs per day. You're like, I know, but I really want like one more at least. You know, you almost say it like it's a chocolate bar, like a cheat meal. Like, oh, just one more. And, you know, you get my point, right? You don't have to be like disrespectful towards your parents. You can just say it in a sweet way. Another comment says, I'm doing intermittent fasting, eating 2 times a day, in the morning and at evening 5 p.m. So if you won't skip breakfast, make the breakfast at 11 a.m. and then have dinner at like 6 or 7. I would suggest not doing it in that way. So the fasting where you eat in the morning and at nighttime and you have the block in between is probably not as effective as fasting as like either eating all your calories super early or late. So the benefit is that if you wake up and you don't eat anything till like dinner time, till like 5 p.m. or something, then you have the entire day where you're just kind of like hungry, which is a good thing. You're focused, you're not wasting time eating here, you're not digesting food, which is so much better. But I also hear of people who wake up and they eat all their calories right away. And that can be good as well, because you kind of like, it's easy to, you know, like obviously you need to fit this around your schedule, but it's potentially like it's a easier way to fit it in, because you wake up, eat as much as possible when you're feeling hungry, and then for the rest of the day you're just kind of like, you know, not thinking about food, you're already satisfied. That can work as well. Another comment says, just decline respectfully, and the original poster said, did that yesterday, they did get mad, but it's worth it, I'd say. And I would agree with that as well. Just don't, there's no benefit to eating breakfast. There, like, it's very little, I'll say. There is a bit of a benefit. Okay, you want to start the day with some protein, I understand. But I will say again, it's like, you don't have to be muscle maxing to have a good life, to have a good physique. When you think about those guys, you know, like the TikTok boys who have got like really nice physiques, right? They've got like some of the most attractive physiques, especially for really young guys, right? And I'm mentioning that specifically because this is a 17-year-old. If you're more like my age, you probably want to be a little bit bigger and more masculine than a TikTok boy. But when you do think about the TikTok boys, they're not muscle maxing. They're not watching like Jeff Nippard. They're not like drinking protein shakes around the clock. They're the kind of guys who like, they're not even tracking their calories. They're waking up and they're like, oh, don't really feel like eating, and they accidentally skip a meal because they were busy, and they just, you know, like one of their random meals is like a fucking iced latte from Starbucks or some shit. And you can still build a really nice physique, right? If you're still training hard, if you're still consistent, you're still keeping up like, you know, good sleep habits and high protein through the day. That's more important than the protein spacing. You'll probably make more muscle if you absolutely optimize everything in bodybuilding, you know, so you eat 30 grams of protein 5-6 times spread out evenly. But it will cost you so much more in sort of bandwidth and digestion and the lack of like being able to fast, that then other parts of your life will deteriorate. You'll get more spots, more acne, you'll be more tired, you know, when you're going full professional bodybuilder mode. So the reason why I'm bringing that up in this argument is because for me, in my life, I've always wanted to fast. I'm someone who does really well with fasting, but I didn't fast for a long time, like as an adult, because I wanted to like maximize muscle mass. And when I look back now, I'll honestly tell you, like, I've personally never noticed the difference in my physique when I fast and I have all my protein in like 1 or 2 meals, or when I have it spread out perfectly timed with like whey protein in the morning, casein protein at nighttime. You know, like for the guys who know what I'm talking about, I've done the full optimizations, and I'm telling you, I don't actually notice that much of a difference with like something like protein timing. Fasting is just incredible because it's just such a powerful tool for your brain to just feel so much sharper, your body to feel lighter. For the last week, I've been eating before I go to kickboxing, and I keep saying it to my coach. I'm like, oh, you know, I just feel a little bit bloated. I feel it kind of like jiggling around in my stomach, and I'm not even eating that much. I'm maybe just having like 20 grams of protein with some eggs and stuff in the morning, and I just feel the difference. You stay just so much mentally sharper, like you're just ready more for the day. That's what I'd recommend. Like if I could go back in time, fasting and also having low carbs is one of the most important messages that I would push to my younger self. You know, if I could force my younger self to do something that would drastically improve his life, I'd put him on the carnivore diet where he only eats meat and eggs and nothing else, including vegetables, which I know sounds scary, but that's what I do. And I'd just make him only eat once per day. So he wakes up and he just drinks water through the day, no other liquid, maybe black coffee is fine as well, water through the day. And then he gets to 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and he has like a big meal, maybe like 3 steaks and 5 eggs or 10 eggs. That's it. That's what I'd make my younger self do. If I just did that, holy shit, his health would have been so much better. I would have been getting sick way, way less. Like, I swear, getting sick happens when you just eat around the clock, because digestion is like so taxing for your body that your immune system starts to fuck up. I don't know if that's proven science, but that's how it feels like for me. And those times where you fast and you just eat 1 meal a day, holy shit, it's just like, it's so like, you're just so sharp and so like zestful. Just give that a try as an action step. If you've watched this entire video and you're interested in everything we covered, just be your own experiment, like your own study. See what happens if you only eat 1 meal over the next few days. You just have it at like 5 p.m. You eat for like 1 hour straight, 1.5 hours straight whilst watching like a podcast. And that means for the rest of the day, before the eating block and afterwards, you just have water and black coffee or some tea if you want, with no milk, no cream, no sugar. See what happens. Just give that a try for a few days. Notice that you will have a lot of cravings, a lot of hunger. Don't get upset at that, because it's almost like a trial. Like, can you feel that hunger and not be moved off course? If you say, okay, you're going to do this for 3 days, and let's say tomorrow it gets to 12 o'clock and you're so hungry and you eat something, that wasn't like a conscious decision made from strength. That was because you're weak, you're gluttonous, you had to eat something. Like, that's like, you know, the same as the Jeffrey who just has to quickly jack off because his dick got hard. You don't want to be that guy, right? You don't want to be the weak version of you that's like a monkey. His dick gets hard, so he needs to jack off. He gets a little bit hungry, so he needs to eat. You want to be able to feel the hunger inside and be like, no, fuck you, I'm eating at 5 o'clock. That's the stronger version of you. The same that your dick gets hard, you're horny, you're like, no, fuck you, I'm not jacking off. I'm gonna, like, you know, release when I get my girlfriend, or I'm gonna, you know, like, just go for a high nofap streak or some bullshit. I hope this helps. If you want to ask a question like this as a Dear Hamza post, the top link in the description will take you over to the free community where you can write a post like this. And if you like this video, like this Dear Hamza playlist, then let me know in the comments as well. If you watch this far, let me know, because I'm happy to record videos like this like every single day for this channel, just unedited, pure, just low dopamine, value, advice. And I want to know that this is definitely like helping people. So if it is, make sure you keep watching these kinds of videos. When you click on a video, you're basically voting for the creator to make more videos like that. Like, you vote with your eyeballs and your attention. So make sure you like the video and subscribe and stuff. Not so much, you know, for the cringe YouTube thing of like my benefit, but it's a good indicator for me to see that people value these videos over like the edited ones that I post on the main channel. Yep. Do the hard work, especially when you don't feel like it. Mwah.